Hello and welcome back to Up The Duff. It's episode 2. You're welcome. You know who else was back, Harry?
Who, Ben? Who's back?
Cheltenham Town fans on Saturday. And what a game it was. Cheltenham scoring 5 in an 8-goal thriller against third place Exeter. And what was it like to be back?
It was incredible. It was just last week on the last podcast we were talking about, your memories of Wadden Road and what incredible games we've seen, and it's up there as one of the best. I think very long time since I think either of us have seen 8 goals in a game, especially going our way. Very happy with it.
Yeah, we have been on the wrong end of a few thumpings from Exeter recently, but I think it was absolutely brilliant to finally see our team just smack them. And I couldn't have even dreamt of that happening in the build-up to the match. Maybe a 1-0, 2-1 win would have been lovely. Then we go and just score 5 and everyone's loving it. And Tozer's dragging players into the crowd. Yeah. That was a perfect start after 9 months of waiting.
It definitely was. And you're very right about the fact that neither of us could have possibly seen this coming. It was a top of the table clash. 2 teams that you'd usually expect to be quite sound defensively, just leaking goals like it's nobody's business. Excellent game of football.
The Exeter, they came in, I think they'd scored 13 goals in the space of 7 days, so they were always going to score. It's the fact that their goalkeeper seems unable to move or jump when a ball is played into the box. He came back from a dislocated knee or something for the game before, and obviously he wasn't quite right, but how stubborn footballers can be. I reckon he wanted to play that game, and after the match he realised, maybe I shouldn't have.
Well, yeah, and it's possibly the same reason Michael Duff had such reservations about bringing Scott Flinders back in so soon. Michael clearly thought he could do a good enough job and doesn't appear to be in much of a rush to bring Scott back into consistent games straight away.
I feel like Scott Flinders Tuesday night, he made some very good saves, but there are also a few dodgy moments where you realise he's not quite back to full fitness. So I'm guessing it was probably the right decision to go with Griffiths, but I hope when Flinders gets back to it and he gets back to his best, Flinders should be starting.
Yeah, we know what he's capable of. I think it's just getting that kind of stability, isn't it? We're in quite a comfortable place at the moment as a club, so it's not like we need to make risks for ourselves. We don't need to put ourselves in danger of losing this kind of momentum that we've got.
That's very true. So we'll just look back at Exeter and the build up to the game. Obviously, I haven't seen you in a very long time. We met up in town, all 2 meters apart, all very safe. Go to the game. We have to get our temperature done. We have to go 2 meters apart. We're not even allowed to stand together because they put us in different places. And I have to say, it was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had, not just in football, but in life.
Yeah, it's incredibly strange. I think when we spoke about the matchday experience before, it's not just about what happens on the pitch. It's about everything that encompasses it. It's about spending time with your mates. It's about
hugging random strangers.
Hugging random strangers, yes. Had a few moments like that in the past. To normal experience, to be socially distanced, to be completely separate from everyone else, especially before the game when there's nothing really happening on the pitch as well, texting each other constantly before the match, talking about everything that's going on around us. So weird experience, but it's just one we've got to get used to for the time being until things can slowly become normal again.
So just going back to something you said about memories, I have to say that match is right up there in my favourite games in Cheltenham's history. Looking back, and a lot of the memorable ones, in all honesty, 6-1 against Portsmouth, very memorable. Didn't go our way. 2-0 loss to West Ham, 2-0 loss to Newcastle. Obviously, we've got some very good wins. 3-1 against Grimsby. Time Pelly scored an absolute screamer against Grimsby. I feel like this one is an amazing home result. It's probably going to go down in the club's history or be looked back on like a lot of games in the past, like Grimsby and Halifax, Rushden Diamonds.
I think a comparable game is probably the Burton Albion game back in 2010 now. Unfortunately, I don't think either of us could have been there, largely on account of being about 9 years old. I certainly remember that result and how much of a shock it was. Kind of waterfall of goals right at the end of it. We really experienced that on Saturday. Just a kind of constant stream of them towards the end of the game.
I feel like that was a kind of scoreline we've only ever really experienced in the Checker Trade or the Papa John's Trophy. Obviously, we had the 6-2 against Arsenal, 6-1 against Leicester, 7-4 or something ridiculous against Newport. Obviously, Tuesday's game against Portsmouth didn't really go too well. I thought it was an entertaining game. I went, you didn't, but I don't blame you for not going. 3-0 loss wasn't the best, but that is, 11 goals in 2 games now for Cheltenham? That game's not scored by Cheltenham, obviously. We have differing opinions on the Papa John's Trophy. So if you'd like to just start us off by saying why you don't like it.
No, I don't enjoy the EFL Trophy. It's not to say I don't understand the reasons why it exists. It does have its relative merits, but to me as a fan, certainly, I don't enjoy watching the games or attending the games. It stems from kind of it not having the competitive edge of the other competitions, you know. Look at the other cups and you think, right, well, we're playing for something here. This is very serious. Both teams are going to be fully committed to getting a result in this game. Whereas in the EFL Trophy, you're not seeing your first team lineups. You're not necessarily seeing teams playing for anything other than prize money. And I think if you looked at our results over the last few years in it, ever since it got reformed in the same season we came back to the Football League, I believe, it hasn't necessarily always been favourable to us. Again, like the Newport game where we lost 7-4, a few games against Forest Green which haven't been favourable. Most notably that 2-1 loss at Wadden Road and I think it was a 4-0 loss at the New Lawn. I don't feel like the players are willing to make that same kind of commitment to it. They would a regular competitive game, and for that matter, it doesn't appeal to me as much.
I feel like, obviously, you've said you don't get to see your first team. But I quite like being able to just go see those fringe players. I think it was Bolton. It was a good game. We won with a 90th minute penalty. Amari Morgan-Smith played and scored. Jack Munns played. Callum Kitcher played. Those icons. I feel like it's a really good opportunity to see those players and see youth players as well, see what we've got coming through. Obviously, Felix Miles made his debut Tuesday. I thought he was very impressive. He was probably the highlight of the game for us.
Yeah, that's certainly the biggest merit of the competition, isn't it? It's good for the youth players to get minutes against actual professionals, and that's obviously very good for them. Yeah, obviously it's really good for the club because they can actually bring these players in. Obviously, we've seen some managers in the past kind of fret at the opportunity to play youth players. That Wickham game a few years ago, 3-3, when Scott Brown was tied because he couldn't play against his parent club. We had Reece Lovett on the bench, and for Gary Johnson, instead of playing Reece Lovett, he decided to bring in that emergency loan.
Rob Lainton, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
An interesting record of 3 conceded and almost 1 casualty.
It's just the fun little tidbit that he was the goalkeeper that conceded 5 to us in the Port Vale game the year afterwards.
Just looking back at our time in the Papa John Checker Trade, whatever it's called, EFL Trophy, we've come up against some big names in the academy sides, and I feel like giving those players the chance to be playing against professional clubs has been really good for their development. Against Arsenal, we had Bukayo Saka. He's obviously gone on. He's made about 36 appearances in the Prem, scored twice. He's a regular among Arsenal's first team. Hamza Chowdhury, who's played 39 games in the Prem with another 2 goals. Harvey Barnes, obviously being the standout here, 65 appearances, 10 goals. He is a first-team regular at Leicester now. We also, at Swansea, had Joe Roden, who we then took on loan and has now gone on to go to Tottenham. Played 4 Premier League games in his time. Not quite scored yet, but I feel like maybe this competition has really given them the chance to push on and show what they can do.
On the flip side of that, it does run the risk of at least semi-normalising elite level B teams and elite level youth teams being in the professional game. Obviously, very recently there was the Project Big Picture story that got leaked to the press. You know that the EFL chairman was involved in this as well. Had Manchester United and Liverpool succeeded in their power grab, no, it's a flippant term, but I wouldn't want to put it any other way, we could have seen those biggest teams using their democratic leverage to influence the lower reaches of the game even further by allowing these teams to participate not only in the EFL trophy, but in the EFL altogether. Now, I don't think that this is a big risk now that Project Big Picture has been quashed. You feel like these biggest teams wouldn't mind having their B team, having their reserve players, their youth players playing in a professional environment constantly instead of kind of rotting away in the reserves or getting sent out on loan. Look at Chelsea and how they've utilised Vitesse to bring their best players through.
That's all very true. I think everyone was delighted to see Project Big Picture just get swept away, never happening. And I guess this B team coming into it is a worry, but at the same time, their record in the competition shows they're not Football League standard. They've got a few wins. I think Cheltenham have only ever lost once to an academy side. The furthest they did once make it to a semi-final. I believe that was Chelsea, but they've never made it to the final. If that were to ever happen, and that they were like, yeah, we're going to let these B teams come into our leagues, the fans would revolt, and hopefully that would see it just get quashed.
Yeah, you definitely hope so, wouldn't you? It's just a case of whether they would stand up and listen. I mean, the fans put in a little bit of a revolt when the EFL trophy got reformed. You know, there was obviously the B team boycott where fans did kind of abstain from these games for a while. To an extent, they still do. Not enough for the clubs to and the EFL in general to take any notice of it.
I feel like the benefit of having these young teams involved in football in this environment just outweighs how the fans feel about it and how they don't like it, because it clearly has done something right. We're starting to win at age group competitions, starting to do very well on the international scene with all our young players coming through. And I feel like we can't ignore the impact that having academies in the group stages has had on the young players' development.
Definitely. So in a way, this almost isn't a cup for the fans, but then you have to decide, do you want competitions to be for the fans or not?
But yet in these early stages, not many people go, but the competition does become for the fans the further you get through. You look at 2019's final, that had 85,021 people watching Portsmouth against Sunderland. You couldn't go there and tell any of them that this isn't a real competition because it's got a load of under 21 players.
That's the thing, isn't it? People can complain all they want, but at the end of the day, if your team goes to spend a day at Wembley, you're going to go.
Can you imagine? It's 1984. You think your team is going to go play at Wembley, but the Horse of the Year show has damaged the pitch and the EFL Trophy final has been moved to Hull. It's just a very interesting tidbit I found. I thought we should share that with you all. This competition, I don't think, has ever been taken that seriously. The 1981-82 season, where they used a group stage and called it the Football League Group Cup, obviously that didn't last, but it does show that the EFL don't seem to care that much, and it does seem to be like, this will be our trial. If it works, we might do it. If not, we'll change it. So maybe, yeah, they will change it and the academy teams will be moved out at some point. But for the time being, I'm fine with it. Adults have to play against kids, but also gives the chance for kids to play with the adults. I spoke to Pete Haynes, and you can read about it in the article I'll link in our description on YouTube or on my Twitter at here's_Ben_, where he loves the competition. His exact words were, personally, I think it's a brilliant competition. Now, Harry, who would you say Cheltenham's best striker is at the moment?
I think it's George Lloyd.
Funny you should say that. George Lloyd made his debut in this competition. I believe it was against Swansea, the only time we've actually lost to an academy team. Look at what he's gone on to do. That was his first chance, and he's just pushed on. Look at many other players have made their debut in the competition. We had Aaron Evans-Harriott go on. He's gone to Coventry now, I do believe, but he made his debut in this competition. Grant Horton, Tom Chamberlain, Players like that who otherwise might not get that chance are given the chance because, yes, it's a less competitive game. There is that competitive environment where 3 points are on the board. It's your chance to show what you can do in that pressured environment.
We are definitely reaping the rewards of it now, aren't we? I think it was an undisclosed fee we got for Aaron Evans Harriet. But, we've held on to George Lloyd, and he's starting to really produce the goods now. The goals are finally flowing. We've got Callum Ebanks as well, coming up through the academy too, haven't we?
Read out something that Pete said. He says, it's the best chance for them to get their debut because it's a pressured game, which I think is very true. The player goes one of two ways. They either kick on or want more, or they kind of dwindle again, and you really find out about that player. Okay, and you find out about that player because they do need to perform to win. It also gives them the chance to show what they can do and put themselves in front of Mike Duff and the first team staff. To be honest, before I spoke to him, it wasn't really an aspect I'd looked at. I'd seen, young players come through for us, but I never really realised how important it was for them. And alongside the loan system, it is absolutely massive for them going on and becoming professional.
Yeah, I think it's really good, actually, having that insight from someone in the club talking about the impact this cup actually has, and hopefully that'll open a few people's eyes to the benefits of it. Looking forward to reading your article, Ben.
Funny we should mention George Lloyd, because originally when I saw him play, I wasn't too sure on him. Maybe he'll make it, maybe he won't, maybe it won't be here. Obviously, he had a couple of loan moves at Hereford. Things never really worked out until this season, when I'd say he's been absolutely brilliant, and he is by far our best striker.
I'd agree with that sentiment. I think he's come on leaps and bounds this season in such a short amount of time too. Obviously, Michael Duff has said before that last season was a kind of wasted year for George.
Done a bit with the first team, but he never really pushed on, made that position his own. We make fun of Firmino for being a striker that doesn't score goals. George Lloyd doesn't score that many, but he's still integral in our attack. I noticed on Tuesday. Without George Lloyd, we couldn't really do anything. And once he came on, that's when we started to look like a threat.
Come in, and he's looked like a very, very strong player, I'd say, especially in the Tranmere game, partnered up front with Andy Williams. It's probably his best performance. Yeah, he didn't get any goals for his troubles that day, but he was quite unlucky that the one goal went down as an own goal.
Happened a few times. I think it was Leighton Orient where he should have scored. It went down as an own goal. Saturday against Exeter, it looked like he may have scored. I think BBC and Sky said it was George Lloyd. Everyone else said it was Sercombe because they pretty much shot at the same time. And I feel like he's not really scoring.
I'll be honest,
he's doing
man,
everything but.
In the stadium, I had no idea what happened. Obviously, incredibly blind over long distances, and because of that, I just saw the net go. It wasn't until I watched the highlights later that I saw just how indistinguishable the shot actually was.
George Lloyd has proved me wrong. Are there any players that you'd say have proved you wrong during their time at Cheltenham? Whether you thought they'd be very good or whether you didn't think they'd be too good?
I singled out two players over the course of their spells at Cheltenham, and one player for this season, say Sean Long and Connor Thomas, have both surprised me. I'd say Sean Long because obviously he came into the club and sadly got injured quite soon into his spell, so we never really got the chance to see straight away just how good he was. Obviously he was always going to be compared to Chris Hussey, given he's an incredible fullback. Yeah, I'd say Sean Long, he's a great attacking threat. He's good at defending. It'll be interesting to see the kind of competition that is created between him and Matty Blair when he is to full fitness again. Yeah, obviously I singled out Connor Thomas as well. He is a model professional. The way he goes about his business, at the start, it almost seemed quite lethargic. He seemed like this kind of Rolls-Royce player, but he's just incredibly calm and level-headed. He's so reliable in so many different conditions. You really have to hand it to him. He is one of our best midfielders and by far the best penalty taker at the club due to this kind of effortless composure that he has. This season, I'd say a player that has surprised me more than anyone else is Will Boyle. I think he was overlooked last season because of Jacob Greaves, obviously being this immense talent who's making first team appearances a whole now. And that goes so far to saying how good he was. Obviously, Will Boyle made that mistake in the second leg against Northampton, which we won't dwell on for too long because don't really want to remember that. But he is such a good defender. He is so good at dealing with the attrition of League Two. That physicality, that strength. He's good at hoofing the ball out when he needs to, doing a job. He's so good from set pieces at scoring goals.
Even on goals with Dan Holman, which is an absolutely mental thought after Holman just went on a mad one in the National League.
That's all you need to know, though.
We take him out and we've lost 19 goals. You could see Tuesday night that without him in the box, we're not really an attacking presence at crosses. When he tries to play it out, it is absolutely terrifying to watch, and he can play a few stray passes.
That's his biggest weakness, isn't it? And probably the biggest threat to his place in the side, a passing centre back. Someone with the ability to defend like him, but with the ability to play a good long ball.
It's very unlikely you'll be able to find someone who can pass and score as a centre-back like Will Boyle does.
The only players who are a threat to his position are ones who are in higher leagues at this point.
Threat, I'd say, is Jacob Greaves. Yeah. So speaking of another defender, one I thought was Ben Tozer. Now, when he came in, I was just in a Year 12 law lesson scrolling through Twitter. I wasn't the best at law, as you can tell. And I saw the tweet saying, Cheltenham Town are delighted to announce the signing of Ben Tozer from Newport. Now, my law teacher was from Newport. Her husband, season ticket holder, I think. It's like, you got any idea who Ben Tozer is? It's like, no idea. To be honest now, put your phone away. We're trying to look at people dying. So it's like, yeah, fair enough. I had a look. It was like their second choice centre defensive midfielder or something. He'd actually rejected a contract extension to come here. So it's like clearly Newport wanted to keep him. Now, we can't forget the time Ben Tozer went up front.
No, I don't think there's any Cheltenham fans who are going to forget that horrifying moment.
To be fair to him, he hit the post, I think.
He's certainly an aerial presence.
How different things could be if that shot had gone in and Ben Tozer had become a striker instead of our centre-back.
I've saved Gary's job.
Oh, God, it would have as well. I'd never thought of it like that, but fair play to Mike Duff. He has turned Tozer to not only one of the best centre-backs in the league, but into a leader, soon into a legend, I have to say. Absolutely brilliant for us.
In the future, when people think about this era under Michael Duff, they will think about Raglan, Tozer, Boyle as that key element to the squad. The reason why for so much of last season is a team that would only concede one goal in a game, they wouldn't concede any more. If the season had played out, probably would have got automatic promotion, and it would have been because of their defensive efforts. Hopefully this season they'll get their reward.
I mean, last year we conceded the least goals out of any team in the top 4 leagues. Absolutely mental. We were just so good in defence. I think that Northampton game was the first time we conceded more than 2 or something. But I still feel as though we are one of the best defences in the league, which is it's a far cry from what we had before, where we'd be shifting 3 or 4 a game, 6 a couple times.
Yeah, I can't remember when the record started last season, but it certainly didn't kick in straight away. It was around that winter time that we started to see that sheer consistency of things. So there's no reason to suggest a similar pattern can't be found again at some point soon. It remains to be seen, of course.
Another player that proved me wrong was Scott Flinders. Obviously, he came in, he was unattached. Have a look at his name on Twitter. He's Butter Flinders. People weren't too keen on him. He'd been at Macclesfield, I believe it was, not really played there. First few games were a bit iffy. I do remember him almost spilling a couple. I believe Chesterfield away, it almost happened. The turning point for me was Lincoln at home. I think we spoke about it last week for different reasons, but he was immense. I think that was one of the single greatest individual performances I've seen from a Cheltenham player.
It was a 1-0. Obviously, Danny Wright nicking that one goal, but we certainly had our backs up against the wall that day. And yeah, Scott Flinders made an incredible amount of saves. He certainly proved a lot of us wrong.
It didn't start the best. It was a 1-0 defeat to Stevenage, I believe his debut. In his first 10 games, we got 3 clean sheets. It's not bad, picking up 15 points, but certainly it could have been much better. Flinders gives us something now that Griffiths doesn't. He just commands his area. He'll come out. He'll push players out the way to get the ball. He's a lot braver, as you can tell from the Bradford goal where Griffiths was kind of left in no man's land. But it's a bit unfair comparing these two, when another comparison to be made was Scott Flinders to John Flatt, the man he was brought in to replace.
There's a lot to be said about John Flatt's time at Cheltenham. Second spell, that is, obviously the first spell is just a nice distant memory of winning the National League, but it wasn't so pretty.
3 or 4 appearances before Johnson was like, nah.
Flinders definitely
an improvement.
Made a huge impact on our performances over the course of that season.
It was sad. It was actually sad to see that double leg break against Oldham.
Yeah, it was very worrying as well. You see a player towards the end of their career.
Like when Aaron Downs did his ACL and he was never the same after.
When an older player sustains an injury, you worry it's a bit like a horse breaking its leg.
I'm very thankful we didn't shoot Scott Flinders after that.
I don't think that would have been very nice to him. Probably quite inhuman. I think you'd probably get arrested for it.
Probably would have stabbed him in the back a bit by shooting him in the face. Thankful we didn't do that. He's come back and he has been very, very good.
This is rather morbid, this.
Well, I did warn them we'd go off on tangents. This tangent a bit different to last week's.
But yes, in any case, it's really good to see Scott back, and it's good to know that he's not lost it, as it were. See him in goal, it's largely the same old Scotty. So
when Flinders was injured, we did see the loan arrival of Owen Evans, who we snatched from Macclesfield. And despite them being near the bottom, mainly because of a point deduction, they did have a very good defence, and you can really see why Duff thought, yeah, that's the goalkeeper I want, and he was very, very good. I think he was the perfect goalkeeper for us.
Really good shot stopper with great distribution. A player that really fits the Michael Duff system.
I don't think he's to blame for what happened in the second leg of the playoff.
So many players played the worst games of their Cheltenham careers at the worst time. Remember at the time I called it, our Watford game. When you think about Liverpool's season last year, playing sublimely through the entire thing, and then out of nowhere, bang, they lose 3-0 to Watford. Who'd have seen that coming? You certainly wouldn't have expected it from Cheltenham.
To be fair to Northampton, that second leg and the final, they were immense.
I think they had nothing to lose for the second leg, and it worked. They took that mentality into the playoff final and dominated an Exeter side who have hilariously lost a playoff final 3 years in a row or something.
It's 3 and 4 seasons.
You do wonder if Cheltenham had held on, got to the final, played Exeter City, what could have been.
Much rather win the league than go up in the playoffs.
So yeah, if we can win League Two, it'll be an incredible achievement.
Thank you for listening to Up The Duff episode 2, Head, Shoulders, Knees and Tozer. If you've got any players that have proved you wrong or anything you'd like to tell us we did bad, feel free to comment on Twitter or on YouTube. We're also on Spotify now if you want to go listen to there. And thank you for listening.